Welcome to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. Here are your hosts, DJ Marcotte and John Sirois. Enjoy the show.
Good afternoon, people. What's going on? Welcome to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast, the working class podcast, home of the blue collar ballers. Look for us on Facebook at Armchair Fantasy Football, as well as on Twitter at Armchair FF Pod. Also, send your emails and questions to armchairfb@gmail.com. I am John Sirois. DJ is out of commission today. The sickness has got to him worse than we thought, so hopefully he'll be back tomorrow to do the show with me, but I am running solo today. Today's topic, we are going to break down the Week 3 slate, and tomorrow we will go over start and sit for Week 3. So the first thing we're going to go into is injury news, or major NFL news, I should say. We're going to start with LaShawn McCoy for the Kansas City Chiefs. As of right now, his MRI shows no significant damage, and he has actually a shot to play in Week 3. He does have a hard matchup, though. He will be going up against the Ravens. Also, Damian Williams' groin is also not looking too well as well. So rookie Darwin Thompson could get more action this week than usual. In other news, Daniel Jones has been named the Giants starter for Week 3. He's replacing Eli this week. At this point, they really don't have nothing to lose. Eli hasn't done terrible, but maybe this offense just needs something different. Could be finally something that wakes up this offense or this team, but I think it stems deeper than just a quarterback situation. But why not at this point? They are 0-2. They have nothing to lose. In great news here is Sheriff Driscoll has been signed by the Lions. So our boy Driscoll, or Sheriff Driscoll, has found a new home. Very interesting. So he gives them depth to the Matt Stafford. It helps them there, especially with the way quarterbacks have been going down this season. So good to see that they're adding depth. In non-fantasy news, but it could make a difference with how the team plays or matchups, reports are saying that Jalen Ramsey possibly could go to the Kansas City Chiefs. Something to keep an eye on. Nothing's been solidified yet, but news will follow here shortly or in the next couple days. Cam Newton for the Carolina Panthers has missed practice as of today, and he is questionable for this Sunday. He has re-injured his foot, so his status is up in the air for Week 3. If he were to miss time, then Kyle Allen would start over Will Grier for the starting quarterback position. And Antonio Brown saga continues. The NFL League has interviewed the Antonio Brown accuser for over 10 hours today, and it is unclear when the league will reach a decision on Antonio Brown. As far as I know, Antonio Brown will continue to play until the league either intervenes or the team intervenes with a disciplinary action. Demaryius Thomas is expected to is week to week with a hamstring issue from last night. So that offense without Trevor Seaman, that's other news, is done for this season with an ankle injury. If you did not see the hit last night on Monday night's game, Myles Garrett laid a big hit on him, and he landed awkwardly on his ankle, which surprisingly, when you saw it, you thought he broke his foot, but he walked off. But now this injury is actually worse than they thought, though, too. But he is out for the season as of the moment. That's it on news. Like I said, we reported a lot yesterday. We will go into more tomorrow. So let's get down into Week 3. For Week 3, the Thursday night game this week is the Tennessee Titans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Titans lead this all-time series 29-20. Titans are actually the favorite. They're 1-1, and the Jaguars are 0-2. No team so far has looked solid. In week 1, Tennessee looked like a better team. Mariota actually played better than what his stats usually are, but he came down to himself in week 2. As for the Jacksonville Jaguars, they just seem like not the same team they were 2 years ago or even the beginning of last year. They just seem to not be putting it together. Offensively, they're a mess. Nick Foles out for the year. Gardner Minshew is not doing bad, but not horrible. Just a lot of questions on offense, a lot of questions on defense. So this matchup should be interesting. Kind of interested to see what the takes are for start and sit for DJ. I'll go in more into mine, and tomorrow we'll go into the next matchup for week 3. Next matchup for week 3 is Sunday at 1 o'clock. It is the Denver Broncos at the Green Bay Packers. The Denver Broncos are aiming to avoid 7 straight losses. The Green Bay Packers are the favorite in this game. They are 2-0, and Denver is 0-2. The Denver Broncos are averaging 7.5 points a game. Very dismal offense at this moment, and they are given 20 points a game. They are averaging 265 passing yards a game and 93 rushing yards a game. On the other side of the ball, the Green Bay Packers are averaging 14 points a game, giving up 9.5 points a game, and they are averaging 170.5 passing yards, and 95.5 rushing yards. This Green Bay defense has looked solid over 2 weeks now. It is not the same defense we saw last year. 5 new starters are on the defense, and they look like a different unit, and they are playing like a different unit, as you can see from the first 2 weeks. As for the offense, they are clicking, but not what we're used to. We're used to seeing Rodgers throwing up 300 yards. We're used to seeing him dominate, not weekly, but this isn't the same offense we're used to seeing on the field. As for Denver, this team offensively needs to find its identity. Royce Freeman is probably one of the only highlights of this team, as well as Emmanuel Sanders. I don't think it will get any easier for Denver this week, but we will talk more on matchups tomorrow and start and sit. The next game on the slate for Sunday at 1 o'clock is the Atlanta Falcons at the Indianapolis Colts. The Falcons are 1-1, and the Indianapolis Colts are 1-1. The Colts are the favorite in this game. We're going to break down the stats. The Atlanta Falcons are averaging 16.5 points per game, giving up 24 points per game. They are averaging 291 passing yards and 65 rushing yards per game. On the other side of the ball, the Indianapolis Colts are scoring 20 points a game and giving up 23.5 points per game. They are averaging 147 yards per game and averaging 185 yards rushing per game. I think Indy will actually face some competition on defense here. Atlanta is not the same defense it was last year. They actually deserve more credit this year than they did last year. They were picked on last year because of all the injuries they had. A lot of those people have returned. I think this matchup, even though the Colts are favored, I'm leaning towards Atlanta in this one, and I'm also leaning towards this being a shootout, possibly, pending the news of Darius Leonard, who is one of the Indy's star linebackers. It would make a difference. Atlanta looks really good on as a passing team. As for the running game, this would tremendously help me if Darius Leonard missed it. But we will go into more discussion tomorrow once we have more news pending injuries, but something to monitor. The next game on slate for Sunday at 1 o'clock is the Baltimore Ravens at the Kansas City Chiefs. I cannot wait to see this game. Pending, the Chiefs may get Jalen Ramsey, like I said, so that could change the Ravens side of the ball, possibly, but possibly not. It all depends when or if he gets traded or signed. I don't think he would be a huge impact this week based on the fact that he doesn't know their defensive playbook. He may not play at all. I guess it's a wait and see outcome, but I'm going to base this game on Jalen Ramsey not playing. But I think from my opinion in this game, it will be a fantasy fiesta. On the Ravens side of the ball, you have Lamar Jackson. The guy is just on another level. And on the other side of the ball, you have Patrick Mahomes. The guy has proved that he is matchup proof, I think. He has shown that in past contests or games, I should say, like Jacksonville, that he can just play against anybody. He's a must start every week. He's not someone I would ever consider benching. There is a lot of question marks on the Kansas City side of the ball as it relates to injuries. Don't know if McCoy's playing. Don't know if Williams is playing. As more injury news comes up, we will break down more, but we will also discuss the impacts it has on Mahomes. But Mahomes showed last week with the people that are hurt, or even this past week too, he can pretty much play with anybody, and they were just on another level. I mean, Mahomes threw for over 400 yards in week 2. He is facing a tougher D, but he also faced the Jacksonville Jaguars D, so I don't think it's going to be any different here. And the Ravens showed last week that they can be thrown on, so this game I cannot wait to see. I think it will, like I said before, it will be very high scoring. I also just got off the phone with DJ. He wanted me to say hi, and he apologized for not being here today, but he will be back tomorrow with us. So, DJ, I hope you get better. Hope you are feeling better. It is kind of weird doing this solo, but we must go on. So, with that being said, the next game is the Cincinnati Bengals at the Buffalo Bills. The Bengals are 0-2. The Bills are 2-0. Great start for them. The Bengals are last in the NFL with 29 rushing yards per contest. That is not something I would be proud of. Joe Mixon's injury obviously is worse than they have let on. And the Bengals have been throwing like crazy because of this. So let's go into the matchup stats. Before I do, actually, sorry about that. The Bills are favored in this game. On the Bengals side of the ball, the Bengals are averaging 14 points a game, giving up 31, averaging 343 yards passing, and like I said, only averaging 29.5 rushing yards. On the Bills side of the ball, they are averaging 21 points per game on offense, giving up 11 on defense, throwing for an average of 239 yards per game, and averaging 139 yards on the ground. This would be the ultimate matchup for Cincinnati as it relates for rushing yards. I'm not saying that Buffalo is dead last against the run, but they do tend to give up a lot of rushing yards to runners. But a lot of it has to do with how healthy Mixon is. But we will have to wait and see what the reports are saying from the team. Next game is the New York Jets, who are 0-2, versus the New England Patriots in Gillette Stadium, who are 2-0. This is obviously a divisional rivalry. The Patriots are favored, and they are favored heavily in this game. The Jets last night just lost their second quarterback. Obviously, Sam Darnold is out with mono. Trevor Seaman is now out for the year with his ankle injury, and now Luke Falk is the starting quarterback for the Jets. He will be facing a New England Patriots defense that has only given up 1.5 points per game and has not given up a defensive touchdown yet this year. On the Jets side of the ball, they are averaging 7 points per game on offense, giving up 20 on defense, averaging 162 passing yards a game and 80.5 rushing yards per game. As for the Patriots, they continue to improve and always consistent like they always have. They are averaging 30.5 points on offense, only giving up 1.5 per game, like I said, on defense, which is amazing. And I hope this trend continues for them. But they will let up a touchdown sooner or later, but it may not be this week. The Patriots are also averaging 310 passing yards per game and rushing for 112 yards a game. They are one of the better offenses in the league, and after beating on Miami last week, I think it'll continue this week with the Jets with all the injuries they have. The next game is the Detroit Lions, who are 1-0-1. They are facing the Philadelphia Eagles at home, who are 1-1. The Eagles are 7-point favorites in this one. The Eagles' run defense leads the NFC, allowing only 42 rushing yards per contest. On the Lions side of the ball, they are averaging 17 points per game, giving up 18.5 points per game. They are throwing for 303 passing yards a game and averaging 105 rushing yards per game. On the Eagles side of the ball, this offense is scoring at 21.5 points per game. And on the defense, giving up 25.5, passing for 275 yards and rushing for 86 yards per game. This should be a good NFC matchup game here. I'm interested to see. Next game is the Oakland Raiders, who are 1-1, at the Minnesota Vikings, who are 1-1. The Raiders' pass defense is last in NFL, conceding 341 yards per contest. Kirk Cousins in this offense, as well as Stephon Diggs and Thielen, still have not performed to fantasy owners' expectations. This would be, I think, the time that if Cousins does not perform this week as well as Diggs and Thielen, then it is time to be concerned as owners. It doesn't get any easier than this week. Oakland is banged up pretty bad on defense. Their secondary is atrocious, and this is their chance to shine and prove that they are still the same offense that they were last year. I know that they have made it a point to run the ball more, but teams will start to look at stacking the box against Dalvin Cook, and at some point, Kirk Cousins will have to prove that he can throw the ball still. Next matchup we have is the Miami Dolphins, who are 0-2, at the Dallas Cowboys, who are 2-0. The Cowboys are the favorites in this game. The Cowboys lead the NFC with 484 offensive yards per contest. This Dallas Cowboys offense is just on another level right now. Kellen Moore looks like a genius as an offensive coordinator. I don't see it changing this week as they play the Dolphins. Dolphins are, I don't even know if they're purposely tanking. They just look awful, and it just continues this week. Dallas will just beat up on Miami even more. But I'm going to break down some matchup stats here. The Dolphins are averaging an abysmal 3.5 points per game. Their opponents are averaging 45 points on their defense, and their offense is averaging 160 yards of passing yards per game. And they are averaging 31.5 rushing yards per game. The fantasy value here on Miami, I would not play any Miami people. That's my personal take. On the Cowboys side of the ball, the offense is averaging 31.5 points per game, averaging 33 passing yards per game, and averaging 151 rushing yards per game. Their defense is giving up 19 points per game. I think this is a week you can see that the defense will put up better statistics especially playing a offensive team like Miami. You can also see numbers for the Cowboys offense. Their starters continue to put up points like they have the last 2 weeks, possibly even more. But if this game becomes a blowout, you may see people like Pollard get involved. So we will discuss more about this tomorrow, but temper your expectations too as well. The next game after that is the New York Giants, who are 0-2, versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are 1-1. The Giants lead this series 15-7 all time. The Giants have made a change at quarterback, like I said, under the injury news and NFL news. Daniel Jones will be taking the helm, and he has the perfect opportunity to show the Giants what he is made of. This Giants offense is trying to find a win here, and this week could be their chance. Is it a change at quarterback, or is it possibly their defense? I think it's a mix of everything, but they started off 0-2. Like we said in the earlier podcast, Eli Manning was on a short leash, and it shows right here. So they have made the change. On the Giants side of the ball, they are averaging 14 points per game on offense, 280 passing yards, and 140 rushing yards. And their defense is giving up 31.5 points per game. I don't think it's a quarterback change you need also. I know you need to score offense, but 31.5 points per game on defense also shows that their defense needs to improve tremendously. On the Buccaneers side of the ball, they are averaging 14 points per game, passing for 181 yards per game and 110 rushing yards. Their defense is giving up 15.5. This should be something to keep an eye on. I kind of like this matchup. Both defenses aren't stellar. I think we could see this could be a potential week to see a lot of points be put up by both teams for fantasy value-wise, but wait and see. We've been wrong before. Next matchup, the Carolina Panthers, who are 0-2, versus the Arizona Cardinals, who are 0-1. The Panthers are still favored here, but the Cardinals' defense is last in the NFC. They are giving up 458 offensive yards per contest. But like I said, under injury, this could be a week without Cam Newton, but we still have 3 or 4 days before anything comes out, so we will keep an eye on this one. The Panthers are averaging 10.5 points per game, 265 passing yards per game, and 83 rushing yards. But this defense, who's been known in the past to be very, very competitive, are giving up 25 points per game. On the Arizona side of the ball, they're only averaging 11.5 points per game, passing for 302 yards a game and 66 rushing yards per game, and their defense is giving up 25. This Arizona offense is playing at a very high pace, and their fantasy numbers from last year are vastly improving. So I'd like to see this fast rate continue. Kyler Murray has been consistent. David Johnson looks a lot better, so this could be a week that their numbers still continue to improve. The next game is the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are 0-2, versus the San Francisco 49ers, who are 2-0. Very surprising there. This matchup is tied 5-5 over the last 10 games they have played. The 49ers are the favorites in this game, but remember, Ben Roethlisberger has gone to injured reserve for season-ending elbow surgery. So on the Steelers side of the ball, they are averaging 10 points per game on offense, averaging 228 passing yards per game and 56.5 rushing yards per game. On the defense side, they are giving up 30.5 points per game. This is not the same Steelers team we are used to seeing out on the field, fantasy-wise and reality-wise. I think they are struggling to find their true identity on both sides of the ball. As for the 49ers, They are averaging 28.5 points per game, 235.5 passing yards per game, and running for 178.5 yards per game. This defense has improved tremendously. Next matchup we have is the Houston Texans, who are 1-1 at the LA Chargers. It's hard saying that. I'm so used to saying San Diego. LA is 1-1. This is a 4:25 game. The Chargers are the favorites in this game. Chargers lead the Texans 2-1 all-time at home against the Texans. On the Texans side of the ball, they are averaging 17.5 points per game, 185 passing yards, 153 rushing yards per game, and their defense is giving up 21 points per game. On the Chargers side of the ball, their offense is averaging 17 points per game, 298 passing yards per game, and 131 rushing yards per game. And on the defense side, giving up 18.5. Both offenses, I think, are not playing where they were last year, but it seems like they are starting to develop. Remember, the Chargers are without Melvin Gordon, but Phillip Rivers did not look like himself last week. Deshaun Watson last week played Jacksonville. They did not play well as a team as well. So maybe this is a game that each other needs to feast off each other and get back on track. Next game we have is the New Orleans Saints without Drew Brees, who are 1-1, against the Seahawks, who are 2-0. The Seahawks lead this series 8-7 all time, and the Seahawks are the favorites in this game. On the New Orleans side of the ball, they are averaging on offense 10.5 points per game, 274.5 passing yards per game, and 102.5 rushing yards per game. Their defense is giving up 27.5 points per game on the defense side. As for the Seahawks, they are averaging 24.5 points per game, 217 passing yards, and 112 rushing yards. And their defense is giving up 23 points per game. The Saints without Drew Brees just do not look the same to me. I think they're going to have to manage over the next 6 weeks to at least split what they play. And they need to get it done without Brees if they want to have any chance of making the playoffs this year. Next game is the LA Rams, who are 2-0, versus the Cleveland Browns, who are 1-1. Rams lead this series all time 12-11. But this Rams offense showed last week, even with Gurley not completely back on track, that they can still compete, and their offense looked it. Cleveland last night beat the Jets. The offense looked better, but not where I think we expect Baker to be. On the Rams side of the ball, they are averaging 21 points a game, 224 passing yards per game, and 140.5 rushing yards per game. Their defense has improved and only given up 18 points per game. On the Browns side of the ball, they are averaging 13.5 points per game on offense and 274 passing yards and 86 rushing yards. Their defense is giving up 19 points a game. And the last and final game of the slate for the week is on Monday night. The Chicago Bears, who are 1-1, at the Washington Redskins, who are 0-2. The Redskins' run defense is last in the NFC, giving up 168 rushing yards per contest. Will we see more of Montgomery? Will this be a committee? Wait and see. But I think that this is a chance for Montgomery to shine. We will break it down more tomorrow. On the Bears side of the ball, this offense, they are only averaging 3.5 points per game, 164 passing yards, and 99.5 rushing yards, but the defense is only giving up 12 points per game. On the Redskins side of the ball, they are averaging 21 points per game, 289 yards passing, and 37.5 rushing, but their defense is giving up 31.5 yards per game. On tomorrow's show, DJ will be back, as well as myself, and we will go further into these matchups, and we will give our analysis and breakdown of start and sits, as well as inactives, as well as injuries. We will give you also our sleeper picks and also our in-depth analysis of Week 3 game by game. So thank you for listening to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast, the working class podcast and home of the Blue Collar Ballers. Make sure to look for us on Facebook at Armchair Fantasy Football, as well as on Twitter at Armchair FF Pod, as well as myself on Twitter at John2977. Send your questions, comments to our email at armchairfb@gmail.com. And as always, thank you for your support, and I'll see you guys soon.
Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. Thanks for supporting the show. Until next time.